we've been expecting this day. We've been waiting for this day, Laura. So thank you so much for joining our program. And this time we in the audience we have a chance to hear you sharing your story with us. And it's our privilege. Vivian and I got a chance to connect with you, and we had a chance to talk before. And so this today we're gonna ask you, to bring you to different point in times in your life. But first, we're gonna ask you to help us introduce about you and the work and who you are first. Laura, can you help us doing that?
Sure. Well, I'm Laura Neff. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina in the US, and I am an executive and leadership coach for leaders around the world who are really serious about climate change and sustainability and any other efforts that will contribute to a future for the planet for many generations to come that we won't even be alive to see, and also who care about life today and now and how it goes for all of us.
Hmm. Laura, thanks so much for sharing that. It's in your profile you say is that is leaning into our collective humanity is the key to towards sustainability and thriving into the futures, right? So we're gonna bring that topic up at later time in our conversation. Definitely, we bring that up. Allow us to to carry you, to when you were young, and we would like to know, when you grow up, what was, how's everything was then back then?
Hmm. Oh boy. So I'm the youngest of a combined family of seven. So my parents found each other after their first marriages were completing, and I was the product of their relationship. So my mom had three kids, dad had three kids, then they had me, and I spent most of my childhood on a small family farm in western New York State, and I just was writing about this. I was outside, I would guess probably 60%, 70% of my childhood. I was just, my dad loved to be outside. We had several acres of land, and he loved to work out on the land on weekends and when he wasn't working. And I was his shadow. I just loved all of it. And he taught me everything he could. And mostly he taught me about, I think even back then it was the mid 70s, 1970s, and life was getting kind of faster. Um, TV was TV was a thing. He didn't like TV. He had great disdain for television, although he watched it sometimes. But I could see he was a little worried. The older I got, I could tell he was kind of worried about this disconnect between the natural rhythms and cycles and seasons of life,
Mm.
because we are a part of the earth, we are a part of nature, and then this kind of fabricated technological life that kids in my generation were starting to become exposed to. And so I feel like as I grew up, and certainly became a teenager, and got out into the world just a tiny little bit in school and friends and sports, and he was worried, and I feel like I had one foot in that world, the social awareness and growing world, and then one foot in this very natural, more simple, slower, more presence filled life with my family, and that my dad certainly was trying to ground me in, no pun intended. So yeah, so that's a little overview. Is there anything else that you want me to speak to on that?
Yeah, we would love to understand, back then, Laura, when you were young, right? We always have dream of one day we're gonna become, this kind of person, do this kind of job, and some, like me, I want to be, an astronaut. But of course, I'm not an astronaut, right? So back,
In your own mind,
when,
maybe.
yeah, when I sleep, I'm an astronaut in some, some universe out there, but not in this planet Earth, right? So back then, Laura, when you were young, what did you dream that, when you grow up, what kind of job you're gonna be, and then, how, how did you envision yourself in the future as well?
That's a really good question, because I don't know if I've ever been good at answering that. Sure. Um, when I was little, I would dream of being a veterinarian someday. When I got a little older and started seeing magazines like National Geographic, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And then when I remember, I think it was ninth grade in high school here, I took a class called Earth Science where we learned all about the rocks and how the Earth was formed. And I thought, oh, good, this will be great to start my career as an archaeologist. And I think I was about a week into the class, and I just was like, this is awful. I'm so bored. I don't want to learn about this. It was kind of crushing that I just had no interest at all in the science part of being an archaeologist. I just wanted to, go all over the world and find out how life had been. And so that crushed my archaeology dreams pretty quickly. And, I really just bounced through life without worrying about it. When I was in college, so I went to a school a couple hours from where I grew up, my freshman and sophomore year of college. I was an English major from the very beginning. Thankfully for my senior year writing teacher, she stopped at my desk one day in class and she said, "You're going to be an English major, right?" And I was like, I don't know. All I'm thinking about is the next basketball game. And she said, "I really hope that you consider being an English major. You're really good at writing and you understand poetry." And so that was the only reason, truly. I mean, the youngest of seven, my parents had their hands full. Life was very busy, so I was kind of on my own when it came to figuring out what my next steps were. And I don't mean to paint them in any ill light. They took great care of me growing up, but when it came to things like that, it wasn't on their radar. And so it's a great story about the impact that we have no idea we're having. If she had not stopped, just paused by my desk in the middle of class one day and just said that one question, like, you're going to be an English major, right? I don't know that I ever would have thought of that, or if I had, it would have come a lot later. So I was an English major because that was something I was good at, and like, oh, okay. And then I transferred schools and finished out college in Virginia. And but all I knew, truly, when I graduated college, all I knew was that I didn't want to teach high school English. That was it. One of my professors, when I was a sophomore, I went to him before I guess it was the end of my freshman year. I was supposed to sign up for classes for the following semester, and I started having this existential crisis about my life and what was I going to do, and I didn't know, and what classes should I take, because I should know what I want to do with my life so I could take the classes that would support that. And what if I just take all these classes and then decide I want to do something different with my life, and I haven't taken the right courses and I'm not prepared? And I just sat in front of him and just, wah! And he just sat there with this little smile. His name was Dr. Shokoff. He wore a little bow tie, and he enjoyed reading the dictionary. I remember that about him. And he just said, "Laura," he said, "when I graduated from college, I didn't know where I was going to sleep the next night." Truly, he said, seriously, I had no idea. He was the chair of the English department where I went to college. And he said, "Look where I am now. It all worked out." So he's like, follow your nose, do what you love, and you will find your path. And it was like, I just was able to exhale. And now I have words for it, but I've never been a specialist. I wasn't one of those kids that woke up when I was 16 and said, "Accounting, that's my life." It's just not me. So I did. I just followed my nose, and I would say, I know you want to kind of keep going back, but thankfully now at 51 years old, almost 52, I can see that there is a through line throughout the past 30 plus years of people and people development, creativity and expression, nature. Those things, I think, are what have consistently been with me, just because of who I am. And
so at the end, all the dots connected, right? But
So
Laura,
far, I mean, and
yeah.
hopefully I've got a long way to go, and maybe more dots are out there waiting.
Yeah,
But
Maybe I think.
Laura, yeah. I see a lot of curiosity along your path. I mean, questions you ask yourself, question people asking you, and those
Yeah.
curiosities building what you are today.
yeah.
And I think like along the way, people get confused. And what would you advise them if they are going through your path, like our our age right now? Yeah, some opportunities open, and if we don't ask ourselves, or someone not giving to you, what would you suggesting us to think about for that curiosity part?
Thank you for pointing that out and for asking that. No one's ever asked me that before, actually, in that way. Um, I would say a little bit of kind of two hands. One would be truly pursue what makes you come alive.
Mm,
Pursue what your heart is longing for.
mm,
On one hand, I think we have a purpose. Each of us, we're here to, like, if you think of I love the metaphor of a tapestry, where it's beautifully woven on the front and you can see the photo or see the picture of it, but then if you flip it to the back, it's just this mess of strings.
mm,
But so the way I like to think of it, which is not an original metaphor to me by any stretch, but that we're each one of those threads. And it's our job to find our path through life that allows us to live into the color that we are most deeply and brilliantly.
mm,
So if you are golden yellow, that's your job, is to carve your path through life that has you just so beautifully grounded in that golden yellow and as vibrant as you can be.
mm.
That will have you contributing to your fullest potential that you can get to. I don't know if any of us ever get to our actual fullest potential, but that's so on one hand, that. On the other hand, do so wisely.
Mm.
So the part that I have had to run to catch up to, maybe because my parents were really busy on other things, was to realize like I've been a coach for 16 years. Coaching and supporting people in this way is one of the avenues of expression for me that feels good on all the levels. And what I never learned was, how do I have a business as a coach?
Mm.
How do I imagine what I want and need for my life and then make sure that this business that I am in that allows me to coach incredible people can support that life beautifully and allow me to give in other directions through that throughout my life as well. So I would say both. You know, what is the kind of life structure that you're going for, and how can your purpose and your heart's desire and what thrills you and brings you most alive support that?
Mm.
Thank you,
It's
Laura.
always a kind of, you're always pushing one to the forehead. Yeah, kind of making sure that sometimes one goes like this and you have to go, and then the other goes like this. And it's just, I think that's the balancing act that we do our whole lives.
Mm. Laura, I want to bring you back when you were in college time though, because you was your dad's shadow, right? So what did you ask him back then? What did he say to you after?
After college or when?
No, when you chose to study English, and
Oh,
yeah.
he just thought it was fine. His-
That's
he,
yeah,
because
okay. Um,
he was a person that worry about the people disconnecting with nature, right? And then having Laura get into this the major in English, then you might be going out there and teaching and working and then busy in in big cities life, and maybe the discontinuity with the nature will be something that he's been fearful for will happen in your life. So I'm asking that question out of curiosity though.
I think my guess is, it'd be cool if we could go back and ask him, but my guess is he wasn't too worried about me. I think his family was they really appreciated poetry and literature and learning and education and knowledge. And so I suspect he wasn't worried at all about that path that I had chosen, writing, and he loved it. I remember my senior year of college, when I graduated from college, I had written a poem about, I don't know if we have little frogs here called tree frogs. I'm sure there are many varieties of them, but anyway, for some reason I had written a poem about tree frogs, and I gave it to him because I knew he would love it. I knew it would be something that he would appreciate. And we were having his graduation party at the home that I shared with my roommates. And he stopped everything and read it out loud, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, "There, that was just for you. What are you doing?" I'm sure your kids probably have the stories that they're creating from the two of you. Like, they're so embarrassing. But he loved that I took that path and would do things like that with it. So,
well, all right.
Yeah.
You've been doing the, and we know you because you've been doing the executive coaching before, that space even name in the market, right? So people doing it, but not knowing it's called coaching. But before that, you've been also, doing a lot of job and got into a, very high level in organization also. And we would like to learn, from a college graduation girl, Laura, with the, bachelor degree on English, right? English literature. And how that journey, in corporate ladder happened after that, though.
Yeah. Well, I hope that if anybody younger does listen to this, that this gives them hope, because if they don't know what they're doing next, I hope this gives them some hope, because I truly was just, I was waitressing in a restaurant. And then after I graduated college, I was waitressing in a restaurant. I moved up to supervisor, which was a big thing. But I knew that, and this was another little gem moment in my life. So I lived in Virginia and was at this restaurant. I was supervising, and the general manager of the restaurant sat me down one day and said, because it was a part of a small chain of restaurants, and he said, "So, what are you doing next? What do you want to do next with your life now that you've graduated?" And I was like, "Oh." And he said, "Well, I want you to know you could be the general manager of one of these restaurants one day." And he was, now looking back, he was probably in his 30s. He was not that old at the time. And for him, this was probably a really high achievement. And I just was like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I just remember feeling when he said that, the experience I had was, here's somebody outside of me who sees something that could be possible, that I could succeed at, but I don't want that. That's not what I want. So it was one of those moments, like my English teacher stopping at my desk saying, "You're going to be an English major, right?" He was saying, "You're going to keep going in this path and have your own restaurant one day, right?" And I remember saying, okay, I don't think I want that. And I didn't want to offend him, but I just knew. And so I think that was one of my early experiences with my own instinct. And feel like I'm pointing to my gut right here, like feeling inside something go, this is not for us. So I ended up, my brother, one of my older brothers, and his wife and their then very young 4 children had just moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. This was 1993. And I came down to visit, and I had a couple days off from work, and it's like, "Show me your new city." And I had grown up in a small town. I graduated college in a small town. So Charlotte at the time was probably half the size it is now. And to me, it was the big city. This was like a big deal to come to the big city to visit my brother and his family. And my brother worked in the hospitality industry, and he knew this city was about to get big really quickly. And so he really encouraged me to consider moving here. And I just thought, well, what would I do? I was like, I don't know. This was 1993. It was before the internet. And so we still did things like get the Sunday newspaper and look in the classified section and circle jobs and phone numbers that we wanted to inquire about. And so we did. So we got the Sunday paper, and there was an advertisement for an administrative assistant position at one of the banks. And at the time, Charlotte was the second largest banking city next to New York in the U.S. And I didn't know this was when they were just transitioning the title from secretary to administrative assistant. And I didn't know, I'd never heard the title administrative assistant. And so I just looked at the skill sets they said were required, and it was all related to writing and communication and all of that. And I was just like, well, I can do that, and I can do that. I can definitely do that, and I can do that. So I circled it, and in my naivete, I would say, the next morning, Monday morning, 8 a.m., and it was through a temporary agency. So I called the temp agency like the minute they opened. This woman answered, and I introduced myself, and I said, I just saw your advertisement in yesterday's paper, and I can do all of the things that you're looking for, so I was wondering when I could come in for an interview. I remember she was like, okay, how about 2 o'clock? She's like, great, I'll be there, thank you. Now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how just I made this assumption, like, of course you're going to interview me because I can do all those things. So my sister took me out shopping, or my sister-in-law, and we got a dress, and she loaned me her string of pearls and pearl earrings, and got a pair of shoes, and off I went to my interview, and I got the job. So a month later, I moved to Charlotte and became an administrative assistant for what was then called Nations Bank, which is now called Bank of America. And that started my corporate part of my career. So that was how that happened. kids out there who are listening. Just go for it. You never know. Just ask.
Laura, from being an administrative assistant, right, and growing to the level that when you decided to leave Bank of America, it was a huge achievement in between. So we want to know, what else that you did in there naive enough that made you grow that ladders, and what and share with us that journey, please.
Okay. So luckily, the guy who hired me, he didn't know I was coming in through a temp agency. He just thought someone found me, and there I was, and he was a rising leader, and they were reorganizing, which corporations do every other week, and he had just become responsible for 3 different departments that they were bringing under one umbrella from different parts of the company, and they were putting them all together under his leadership. And that meant that the whole group, I think probably at the time, all of whom were in Charlotte, moved into a brand new building, everybody on the same floor, which we used to do. And so there was no organization of anything. The mailboxes, the break room, how to find things, how we were going to do things. And so pretty quickly, as people started showing up to this new work area, I saw that. And because I think it was just something I guess I'm good at, I noticed like, oh my gosh, like they don't know when the interoffice mail is going to arrive. They don't know how to send something through interoffice mail. This is pre-email, heavily used email. And just things like that. They don't know how to ship a package. They don't know, who's sitting where and what departments are here. Like nobody knows anything. And so I just started doing what I saw needed to be done, which was to create communication around the department. I started a little weekly newsletter to let everybody know what was happening and whose birthday it was. And nobody told me what to do. As far as that communication need, I just saw what needed to be done, and I did it. And then there were other administrative assistants that were hired to work for some of the people that reported directly to my boss. So then I started managing them. That was that was my second experience managing people. Probably a little bumpy. I mean, I was like 24. But it was a really great experience. And so then there was a department in our larger area that was about reward and recognition. And I had made a couple things up for that as we went, because there was nothing existed, and somebody became in charge of that, and they said, hey, what if we put her on our team? And so that happened. So then I started in the reward and recognition, which was about supporting people and elevating them through acknowledgement of the work that they had done, and creating new systems so, for example, we had new department values that somebody created, I don't know who, and I came up with an idea for a reward and recognition program that would have people actively engaging with our values, spotting one another, engaged in values. Everybody had these little figurines that they could pass around the department to reward each other, but then they had to give it to somebody else as soon as they could. And just things like that I had all the room I needed to play and experiment and create. And then communication role came open, and I got asked to join that team. I think people just started seeing my natural inclination and strengths. And then, let's see, one thing I've always been good at is seeing the bird's eye view of a situation. So some people are really, really good at the details. Some people are really good at just naturally kind of popping up to the top of the tree and looking at the whole thing and saying, oh, I see this right here is what is making this not move fast enough or whatever. Let's fix that part, or let's do that. So the roles I started getting were kind of like that. So the next step was, this was back when communication within corporations was very much one of the last things people thought about. There'd be a big change that was getting ready to happen, and they would say, oh, we need to get the communication people in here to tell everybody what to do on June 5th at noon when things change. When we switch over to the new system, they're going to have to do all this different stuff. So we need someone in here to create a communication about that. So people were seeing that was not optimal, and that we needed to get communication professionals engaged earlier in the process, and to be thinking with the people who were getting ready to make the changes and how we could communicate along the way and different things. And so somebody created, this was our big fancy name, was cross-functional communication team. And at first it was just sort of tentative monthly get-togethers to say, what are you doing over in your department? What are you doing in your department? What are you doing in your department? Just to introduce communication professionals from across the organization, which was pretty big at that time still. And then they formalized it into a team that was then called the Strategic Internal Communications Team. And this was all in one of the big areas of the company. It wasn't for the whole entire bank. And so that's where I really started cutting my teeth on strategy and strategy development, and we became internal consultants to people out in the organization who were writing their own newsletters and all those things that I had done before. We became consultants to them to help them think more strategically about how they were communicating and what they were communicating. And in the process, we helped to shift the culture of communication in the company from last minute task doers, order takers, to strategic partners at the table much earlier. And we got to speak at conferences and all the fun things that go along with that. And so then we worked a little bit with the leadership development organization at Bank of America, was really, really getting its feet under it. And so they saw value in working with us to keep developing us in terms of how do leaders communicate really strategically, and how do we develop our leaders to do that. And so that was my first glimpse into the world of leadership development. And process was all the buzz back then. It was the first time process development was like this super formal thing in organizations. So I got to work with them a little bit. And so I got, again, like a little bit about a lot of things, but I was getting stronger at communication. So business communication was always something that, even back in the restaurant when I was in college, I was like, why is there no calendar up for everybody to see? Like, does everybody know what's going on here? Can we get a calendar on the wall that we could write on? And, so that kind of, how does this business system and communication work well, was really natural for me.
Well,
so that, yeah.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I was just to say that took me till almost 30. We're still about 20 years back.
But look at this, Laura. Back then in 1993, right? And the management and the culture back then is not really open for people to break the ice and break the tradition. But then you break the tradition of doing things that you think is needs to be done instead of doing what you're told to be doing. And I think that until now there's a lot of organization want the employees just to be in the box and told what and do what to be told. But back then, 30 years ago, right, you're doing what needs to be done, and that eventually getting you the rewards of the recognition and the growth in the job. But definitely we also bring you a lot of like problems from people also. So what made you decide back then, as a very early in your age and very like not experienced enough to have the guts to and Vivian and I always say having the guts, having the guts to do what you think is important and needs to be done.
Well, to be clear, I also was doing a whole lot of what I was told to do. So
Mm.
there was a balance. I did have a boss. He did have things he needed me to do, but he also, he didn't quite have enough for me to do. He didn't really know what to do with me some of the time. And so he sent me to, gosh, anybody listening to this who's not my age is going to be like, what? This was early in the days of things like Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and internal in the company, there was a training group that was training people how to use these brand new tools that we all had on our brand new computers. And so he would just like send me to classes, and he gave me a lot of space. So here's the piece. He gave me room to do what I thought needed to be done.
Wow.
And I would come to him and say, hey, John, his name is John Woodson. I've never been able to find him in many years. I've looked for him. But I would say just, hey, John, I've got this idea for how we should reorganize whatever. And he'd be like, okay, try it, see what happens. and then he'd ask me about it, like, how's it going? And we would talk about it. He might suggest some things. And so he just, he definitely kept me as busy as he could, but then he also gave me the space and time to see what my thinking could bring to the situation. I learned a lot from him. He was not the easiest boss to work for sometimes, but I learned a lot from him. And I think that was really key, that he just let me try stuff.
So it
was pretty low stakes. It wasn't like, this wasn't going to the CEO of the organization, how we organized our mail system, But it really, as an early person, early in my career, it made a big difference for being able to look and see and think and suggest and, add value.
And because of that mentality, adding values to his work, so you got his confidence in you. And then eventually he keep giving you the new things to try, a new space for you to explore and things like that. So Laura, what happened after Bank America?
So here's where things, like where the wholeness of life comes in, as we talked about a little bit before. So when I was 1999, I had had inklings along the way that I would probably not be in corporate America for my whole career. It just, I could tell like there was so much to learn there, and I was able to lead projects that I never would have got exposure to, and we were making a real difference. But there would be times where I would just, I've told this story so many times, that the last workspace that I had was an office on the 7th floor or something of one of the buildings in uptown Charlotte. And sometimes I would close my office door and just go to the window and press my hands on the window and my forehead to the glass and just look down at the street and see people driving around at like 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. And I would think, where are they going? Like, how is their life such that they can be driving around at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday and not be up in an office building running around doing work all day? Like, how does that, what do they do? And where are all those people going that are walking around on the sidewalk? And just had this longing to be out in the world and a little less structured. And so this longing would pop up now and again, and I would think about leaving, and then I would really do another gut check and say, like, oh, it's still not time. Okay, we'll stick around a little longer. And so when I was 29, my dad, who then was 73, he had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's for about 5 or 6 years. And he was a farmer in the early days of pesticides and spraying crops, and our guess is that he developed early Alzheimer's and Parkinson's because of that. So that he passed away. And, all my life he had been that cornerstone for me. And one of his biggest legacies to me was to not compromise in my life, to not spend my life on things and, in situations that did not bring me alive. And so after he passed, I really, really, really took a hard look at my life. And I think that somewhere in there I had gone back to school to get a master's degree in English. Along the way, I had learned to teach. They had a program where so I knew when I graduated from high school or college that I didn't want to teach high school English, but teaching college English had always been a curiosity of mine. Like, what would that be like? Could that be maybe something? So they had this track within the master's program where you could learn to teach college English. And they supervised you, you got your own class and learned how to write a curriculum and all these things. And so I actually did not finish that master's program for a couple of reasons, but I had enough credits, and I had done they had trained me to teach college English the way that they liked it taught. And there was a minimum number of graduate credits you had to have in order to be able to teach college English, and I had plenty of those. So when I told my professor I was going to leave, or my advisor, she said, well, would you be interested in coming back and teaching for us part-time? She's like, we just taught you how to teach, and you could be an adjunct faculty member for the freshman and sophomore level classes. I was like, sure. So that was just before my dad passed. So I think I had gone down to about 30 hours a week at the bank. Kind of knew I was on my way out, but wasn't really sure. And it was scary to think about leaving that nice corporate salary and structure and all that. So after my dad died, I just really took a hard look. I was like, okay, this is happening. Thankfully, at the time, I had a manager who I'm still very, very close to. And she said, well, have you thought about contracting and consulting? Because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was an adjunct faculty member for these college courses, which barely paid anything, and it took a lot of time. And she said, well, have you thought about contracting? Because you're really, like, nobody here wants you to leave. And they'll pretty much get you however they can take you however we can get you. That was just like, I think that would be the case. And so I literally walked out on a Friday as my last day as an employee and walked back in on Monday as a contract consultant person, working with the same people on some of the same projects, only I was working half the time for twice the money.
Wow. See, Laura, we have a lot of angels in our lives, right? You have, your parents, your brothers, brothers, your angel. Then John, your boss at Bank America was your angel, and then now this lady also that giving it advices, and it's not coming coincidentally. It comes from, actually, I think it's, from the works that you do, because they treasure the values that you bring to the table. So, it's a worth trade. It's a deserving trade-off for both sides, though.
I've been in.
Yes, go ahead.
So I for a while I kept teaching college English, which was really fun, and I'm actually still in touch with one of my students from way back then. She ended up working for me in a food company I started years ago, and now she's a minister, and she's just an amazing person. So I was teaching college English, and then it was, again, like really early days of working remotely. So I worked from home, and every once in a while I would go back into the office, but mostly worked from home, and was able to be driving around at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, and like saw what the rest of the world was like. So that was my early. That was right around 30 years old, early 30s, and let's see, 28, 29, somewhere in there. Yeah, 28, 29, 30.
And then since when your solo entrepreneur, all started though?
That was the first one.
That's
Yeah,
the first
my
one.
first little,
and
yes.
I remember the conversation that we had last time. You also starting you're co-founding the company that actually bring you back to the nature. You're connecting you back to the nature also. Tell us about that. That first experience though.
Are you talking about the food company?
Yeah.
Oh, that was just way later.
Oh, way later. Okay, tell us what's in between then.
There's so much more in between.
Tell us more what's in between before we get into that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for a year or two, I did the contracting work and then taught at the university here. Both were amazing, and I think I shared this with the two of you last time we talked. That the way, so I had this idea or something in the back of my mind of kind of, I was frustrated for a long time when I was young that I didn't have my thing, that I wasn't one of those people, that I'm so envious of the people that knew they wanted to be an accountant, that was it. They went to school for finance and business, and then they got a job as an accountant, and that was it. And life was easy. They just were on that track. I was really frustrated for a long time that I couldn't find my one thing. And so how it started occurring to me was like I was collecting puzzle pieces. So when I was, in my corporate life, I got a couple puzzle pieces. One was about communication and being able to design systems for communication. One was, I didn't share this, but when I was in my corporate experience, I did some training and facilitation of training for the people side of the business, to train people in how they were being with each other. And one of those was, you've heard of Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So there's one of those habits is, which one was it now? I'm blanking. I think it was putting first things first, and it was the time and life management portion of his whole body of work. And they had a training program about that. Somehow they let me lead it. And one of the puzzle pieces I collected from my corporate time was noticing how profound it felt for me to teach this program that had people looking at, what do you most value in your life, and how are you spending your time, and what do you see about that? And I would have these men who had been in the operations area of the company for 30 years just weeping because it's the first time they'd ever actually looked and seen how much they love their children, but they never spend time with them. And time was running out because they were getting older, things like that. So I was collecting these puzzle pieces, and then knowing that autonomy and freedom, really important for me. I figured that out when I noticed I was like standing there at the glass with looking down at the cars going by, really like, and then I gave myself the opportunity to try that out, to be somebody who was out in the world and out from under 100% of my time being structured by someone else, and discovered that really worked for my heart and soul. That was really, really important for me. So college English, contracting, consulting, both of those started expiring their delight factor. I was making really good money for me at the time, and money had never really been the motivating factor. And I loved teaching college English, but also I could make more in like 20 hours of consulting than I could in an entire semester of long, hard hours of teaching and grading papers and all the things. And so I was aware of the financial piece of that and the energy expenditure that was required. And so I then met the man who's now my husband, Robert. Who, I was learning how to whitewater kayak. So getting out into nature was one of the things that, when I got in my corporate life, I had almost left that behind.
Mm.
I just like threw myself into that other part of life that was fast paced and in the city now and all the things. And then when my dad died, I got really clear, wow, I've really just lost that part of myself for a while. And so I started getting back outside. I bought a bicycle and I started learning how to whitewater kayak. And so the people who were teaching me how to kayak were also teaching my husband. And I kept hearing about this guy, Rob, and we finally met and fell in love very, very quickly, hard and fast. And he had his own business. I had my own business. And we were just talking one day. We started our relationship talking about very deep things immediately. And he said, you know, I've always dreamed of just taking a year off and traveling the country and seeing, you know, just what else is out there, and maybe living someplace for a summer and working on a farm or something. And I just thought, oh, who is this man? He's amazing. And I knew I was falling in love with him so fast. And I just thought, oh my God, I just met this guy and I'm totally falling head over heels in love with him. And now he's going to leave for a year. And so I started really listening and thinking, could I do that? Could I just shut everything down and travel for a year? And what would that be like? And my family would think I'm crazy. And but long story short, we did that. And we were gonna buy an RV, a motorhome, and we kept looking and looking, but we had a budget. We were on a budget, and we had sea kayaks, which are like 17 feet long and very long and heavy. We had sea kayaks, whitewater kayaks, bicycles, 4 seasons worth of clothing. I love to cook, and so we were like, well, I can't cook in this tiny little motorhome kitchen. That's just going to create. And so we didn't know what to do because our budget didn't match the size of the motorhomes that we needed to get to accommodate all of that. And so our neighbors, I know I shared this with y'all. Our neighbors used to follow a band called the Grateful Dead, which was kind of a hippie band in the earlier days. And a lot of people who would follow them around the country and go on tour, like follow their tour, would do so in school buses, old school buses. And so our neighbor was listening to Robert talk about this dilemma, and he said, well, why don't you guys get a school bus and just make it your own RV? And Robert came in and he said that to me, and I just thought, oh my gosh, like how far is this going to go? This is crazy. But we ended up doing it, and we got on PowerPoint and we mapped out a little floor plan, and Robert is very handy, and so he he made us a beautiful little motorhome, and I painted it, and you know, we just made the whole thing look beautiful, and it was our home for a year, and we traveled all over the US and up into Canada. And that the puzzle pieces I got on that whole experience were how many different ways people can choose to live and be deeply fulfilled. So it just cracked open, you know, I was pretty sheltered as a kid. I came to Charlotte, I had my corporate life, pretty sheltered, you know, it just blew the blinders off of my eyes. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many ways people can live, and that's not the way I would live, but look how fulfilled they are.
Yeah.
You know, who am I to judge? They're happy. Great. And all it takes is like, just, you know, I'm making this sound easy, but just decide you want to live a different way, and then like, what are all the decisions to make leading up to that being the case? And so that, again, like the puzzle pieces were collecting. And so after that year, I came back and went back to corporate for a year after that. I just to confirm that I really didn't want to be there forever full time, which got confirmed, and started working at a little jewelry shop in Charlotte. I had kind of cracked open that part of my creativity again. As a kid, I was really creative and artsy, and started making and selling jewelry. So for 5 years, I had a jewelry design and sales business. Robert and I and a friend created what became Charlotte's first urban CSA program, which is consumer supported agriculture. We found mysteriously empty lot in the middle of Charlotte that had always been gardens and had never had a house built on it, which we didn't know until after we started gardening on it. So we started this huge garden in the middle of on a half-acre plot in Charlotte and fed 17 families for a couple of years, and now they're gardens, local gardens, and farmers markets everywhere. But that was pretty early days for Charlotte in that sense. So just tried a lot of different things, and then in 2006 stumbled upon the world of coaching. And just becoming a thing. There were executive coaches in corporations, but you didn't really hear about it. The public didn't really hear about that. That was very much a business focused internal kind of thing. But then Oprah Winfrey and like famous people started talking about this thing called coaching. At the time it was pretty much life coaching. And all the puzzle pieces, once I heard about it and it was early days of websites, I started searching on the internet and finding people's websites and seeing how they expressed what this thing was and what they did for people and all the different parts and pieces that it brought together. It was just, boom, there it is. That's what all these puzzle pieces have been, waiting for, is to come together in this picture. So I got trained and I had a wonderful school and got certified, and took about a year doing that, but started coaching pretty quickly, and that was in 2006, and started assisting coach training programs, just not too far in, started coaching people who were becoming coaches, and that was when my coaching career started, and that was 16 years ago now.
But Laura, your life has been wandering, looking for things that you are excited and wanted to do, right? So, that may be just another thing that you found that maybe excited you for a while, but then this one stick with you for 16 years, right? How did you know 16 years ago, in that aha moment, this coaching is something that Laura, find connecting everything, all the buzzwords you've been looking for, though?
I wish I had a more clear answer for that, to be honest. When I remember, I have a very clear memory of sitting, so at the time, so this was 2006, homes still had like one computer that would sit at a desk in a room. We didn't have 6 devices that we could carry all around with us. And I was sitting at the computer, and someone had actually, the former manager from Bank of America who told me about consulting and contracting, she was the one who said, "Have you thought about this thing called coaching?"
Wow.
And
what's her name?
Her name is Sue.
Sue.
Yeah, so Sue.
Beautiful. Sue.
Sue comes in again. She's supported me quite a lot through my life. She actually was a part of our wedding. So she said, "What about this thing called coaching?" And I remembered sitting there one evening, and I started looking at Google. It wasn't even Google. It was a search engine called Dogpile. And so I started searching through Dogpile on life. I'm sure I probably did either coaching or probably life coaching, because at the time also coaching, it would always come up with sports coaching results. So life coaching, and I found 4 or 5 websites, and I just started reading and who these people were and what their career had been, and then what they were offering through this thing called life coaching, and it knocked me back in my seat. I mean, I just sat there. Sorry, I just put my hands on the desk and thought, "Oh my gosh, this is it." And then I immediately started searching for schools. Like, how do people get trained in this? Like, where do I go? What do I do? Sign me up. And there were only a handful of good schools. I mean, that already started. There were a couple schools that were like, come learn how to be a coach and get certified in a weekend. That was starting to bubble. And I knew no, I got from the very beginning, coaching is people allow you into their lives and bring you in as a partner to support them in what's next. And that's a really big deal. That's kind of a sacred space. And I'm not going to just pretend like I know how to do this. I want to find a school that's going to put me through my paces, that's going to be rigorous, that will be have integrity. So I started searching for schools, and a couple days later, again, I was like, oh, these are okay, this is fine, this looks okay. And then I very randomly found a link on a lady's blog that I had been following, and I hadn't checked her blog in like a year. And I was just like, oh, I wonder what she's up to. I went to her blog, and then she said something about I'm coaching my heart out with my clients, and the word coaching was hot linked. And I was like, she's coaching? What? Does she mean the kind of coaching I'm looking at? And I clicked on it, and I found my school. And I remember running out into the living room where my husband was and saying, I found it. I found my people. I found my school. It's happening. It was just like real gut instinct. The way so the school that I went to, their deepest skill is in what they would, now it seems like jargon, but at the time the language was about the being of a coach. There's a lot of stuff we do as coaches. Doesn't matter if you're a life coach or an executive coach or a divorce coach or an eating coach or whatever. Now there's a million kinds of coaches, but the presence and the ability to cultivate trust in a safe space and to really be with somebody, and what's it like to be working with a client when they start crying? What do you do when the client starts crying? How do you stay with them but not let that emotion take you over? And it was in-person training for the whole first part of it, which for me was really important because I knew that would be very confronting. And if I tried to do anything virtual, I would just, run away from the hard parts. So anyway, so that's how I knew. I just kind of knew.
Wow. I think you're just responding to the calling, and the calling also, responding to your seeking also. Because you look at it, this, it's funny because, for a year and a half, you didn't, follow her blogs and everything until until you're searching for the program that you can get certified for. And just her name popped up, right? So everything happened in our lives. A lot of things that unexplainable. I told you, and a lot of times also we just try to celebrate lives as it is, and welcome in whatever it comes, and then we don't know what holds in the future. So just live and enjoy it, right?
And now when people are like, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, I don't know. That's such an adventure. Wouldn't it be like, who knows? It'll be great to see. I don't know where I'll be 2 years from now. And I love that. It's a whole different perspective now.
But Laura,
go ahead.
Laura, you've been in the coaching for a very, very long time, and now you have been leaders to build a sustainable and thriving future. And I really like the word, collective humanity. And what does it mean as a collective humanity in your definition, though?
Okay, I'm going to answer this through a side door because you also asked about the food company I started, and I think I can connect those two. So in 2011, so for all my life, I've never lost. Like when I was a kid with my dad, we had big gardens, we had cows and pigs and chickens, and the purpose for all of that was to feed our family. And he just had a passion for as much self-sufficiency as we could create while still being out in the world and working and having jobs and things. And so I never lost that connection to growing my own food and preparing food and living, now it's got a name like Whole Foods, plant-based diet. And I don't eat much animal products at all anymore, but at the time when I was younger, I did. But Whole Foods was just the way people ate. They grew stuff in their garden. They had animals for meat, and that's how they ate. There wasn't all the processed foods and things when my dad was growing up. And so I had always, even if wherever I lived, even if I just had a container with some lettuce in it, I was always looking for where's the sun? What can I grow? Even in a little jar or container. So when Robert and I got married and we had our own place, I started growing a garden again and getting back into growing my own food and cooking from that during the summer months. That's why spring, I just love spring, and the garden gets started in the spring. So that's part of why it's one of my favorite seasons, And all that to say, so I was very aware of my own desire to eat well and to nourish my body well, and research was just coming out about, this was like around 2010 to 2011. So much research had started to come out about epigenetics. So, we might have, like my family has tons of heart disease all over the place in it. I had my first really high cholesterol test result when I was 25. And that was the early days of like, hey, maybe there's something we can do about this. Maybe just having the genetics for things like heart disease or whatever doesn't mean we have to get it, or we have to get it as quickly, or like maybe we can do something through diet and lifestyle. So a lot of my older brothers and sisters had struggled with cholesterol early on and were on drugs and medication, and this new idea of prevention had just come out. And so I was on that early. And so when it was about 2011, I had a good friend who really values health and well-being, but she had a corporate job, very demanding corporate job, and her work, the lifestyle she lived because of her work was not a match for eating really well, especially when she needed convenience and food quickly and didn't have a whole lot of time or energy to go to the grocery store and to plan her meals and to cook all the meals and chop all the vegetables. And so it made me mad. I just like, why is it that we're learning so much about the fact that we can actually reverse disease, keep disease at bay, change the course of our family history in one generation, literally, show future generations a different way to be with food and our bodies and all of that. And yet my friend can't, like, when she turns to the food system that we have in America, at least, it gives her everything but what she wants, but it is fast and it is convenient. So it just made me angry. And I thought, somebody needs to do something about this. This is ridiculous. So I stomped around, very self-righteously for a while. And then one day it's kind of like my coach self woke up and was like, hey, what if you were someone? What would it look like if you did this? And, I had cholesterol and heart disease issues to think about. I had been diagnosed with arthritis a year or two before that. So there were things in my own body, and I was learning how to eat well for myself. And I thought, well, if I created something, here's what it would look like. Again, way before the days of DoorDash and Grubhub and like all the delivery services. There was one prepared food delivery service in Charlotte at the time, and it was very much like the way my dad ate growing up: meat, potatoes, starches, heavy, lots of butter, lots of dairy. And at the time I was pretty much almost totally plant-based. So I designed this business and I showed it to people who were smart, and they said, no one's doing all of this. It was plant-based, gluten-free, processed sugar-free, local farmers, sourcing local farmers, or as organic as we could make it. And so long story short, I met my business partner while I was running a pilot and testing the idea, and she's a chef. And so we started this company called Nourish. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary.
Wow.
And it was Charlotte's first ever plant-based, beautiful, delicious, hearty food, like surprisingly delicious, and like, oh, I want more of that. It was not rabbit food. It wasn't like just salads. So I sold my part of the company to her in 2014, but I'm now, I've been coaching them and supporting the business in ways that I work now. All this goes back to the shared humanity piece of, I think that when I put myself in a position of causing something to happen that had people in our community connecting more with like where they spent their money, was on a local business that supported local farmers, that brought cleaner food to their doorstep, that allowed them to feed their family in a way that they knew supported the whole community. We got our packaging from local vendors, partnered with other businesses to help give them some visibility. It just brought the whole system closer. And we loved, part of my job was getting the food to the people, getting people to the food, like the marketing, the community building, and that was a big message. One of our messages was convenience doesn't have to mean compromise, and that, you know, really we didn't use this language, but I love this saying, all ships rise with the tide. Like we can have a conscious consumer experience that we know supports everything around us. I mean, life in this earth, and we are all a part of a living system that is so much more vast than we can even fathom. And so even in these small ways to support that, I think that really woke me up again to, okay, yeah, I could do something about this. And in my coaching, knowing that when I worked with clients, whatever we were working on for them, one of the consistent things that would happen is that they would, whenever their last conversation was, they would walk out the door knowing who they were, like knowing what their thread in the great tapestry of life was about, at least more, and being able to speak that and make choices in their lives based on that. And so they would then be more confident, and they would walk with their head held high and their shoulders back and be taller and know their place in this whole system of life, and at least know more about it. And so I knew that whoever they interacted with after that got a different experience of that person, that thread in the tapestry, and that made a difference, you know. So I think it's always been a part of who I am, thanks to my dad, and gratefully I've found my way through my work life such that I can support that elsewhere through the people that I can impact.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. So we just have two little steps left to get to current day. One is that after, 10 years of coaching on my own in private practice, I got to partner with some amazing people that I'm connected with still, and support other people with companies like coaching and development, but that are bigger than mine, and coach through them as well. And, but I realized I was kind of lonely. And I wanted to learn more in areas that I couldn't do myself. Like, so I ended up, short version of the story is I joined a really wonderful boutique consulting firm based out of Charlotte, with clients all over the world now, but they focus on very, very senior level executive development, C-suite level team development and coaching and consulting and organizational transformation. So I spent 5 years with them, and there were 12 of us, 11 to 12 of us, and definitely it was very much a family feel, and I learned so much, so much. And we're still closely connected, and I do a little bit of work for them still. But the last step in the journey that got me to where I am today was that almost exactly 1 year ago, my older brother, Bill, and my mom both passed away on June 1st. Bill had cancer for 3 years, and I walked with him through that whole journey. I was his support person, and my team and all my people around me supported me in the process. But after they died, nobody, like, we just didn't see it coming, obviously, that they were going to pass on the same day. My mom was 84, my brother was 59. And it just worked out that way. And it was such a significant blow to me in my life. I just had to take some time, and I'm grateful. It was a huge privilege that I was able to, but I took about 7 months off last year after they passed, and just kind of like when my dad died, just took stock and reoriented. And about halfway through that time, I met with the president of the company I had been working for, and realized, like, this part is over. I don't know I had already thought about just going back to pure coaching because that's my true love, and also giving myself the freedom and autonomy again to construct my life how I wanted to. And there were colleagues in the leadership coaching, executive coaching world that I really wanted to partner with again and be free to do that. And so I had an inkling that was what I would end up creating next. And sure enough, in January, I launched my current practice, which is called New Atlas Coaching, executive coaching for world-changing leaders. And we focus on, it really is about like the leaders who are raising their hands and throwing themselves at this climate sustainability crisis that we're in, which of course extends to business. It has to. Businesses are going to be, what corporately the course of life for the world. So if I can get in there and support them and have them show up firing on all cylinders and thinking about the people and thinking about the business and thinking about the greater life out there depending on them, and just have it go as well as I can, then that will be a life well lived from this point on.
Laura, Vivian and I wish that we are next to you now so we can give you a big hug to, for the loss you've been through, but that the works that you've been doing now, taking the coaching and the experience to the next level, is not about helping the people that you want coach anymore, but it's helping them to create a vision, the works that build the environment to be a better place for everybody. So it goes to the next level of the work that you do already, and everything boils down to the thing that you shared earlier, to the thing that you love, it's the heart, right? And then combine it with the purpose of who you are and what you want to be doing in your life. So I think it's all of the dots has been connected beautifully, and where your father was worried that you're gonna lose the side of the connecting to the nature, and now you have been businesses to make that nature connectedness and sustainability beautifully. So thank you for coming to our show, Laura, and for sharing it. And it's a very beautiful story. It gives us a lot of inspirations to rethink and reflect on how we live our lives, and then where else can we take our course to the next level. Like you said, bow rise with the tides, right? So we hope that we can rise our boat in small tides, also in the big tides also. So thanks. And we really appreciate the conversation today. And if anything that we can be adding values to to the work that you do, please shout out to Vivian and I, and then we'll be so happy to join. Okay.
Well, thank you for wanting to hear my story and for your patience in hearing my story, and just for what the two of you are doing. I love the light that you're shining out into life. And I know you started with your own children, and none of us can do everything for the world, but we can all do our piece with great intention and great care. And I experienced the two of you for sure being that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Laura, the world is small. I hope that one day Vivian and I will be seeing you in person with Rob.
I hope so.
And we're going to have a physical hug and not, the virtual hug line right now. Okay? So if you and Rob ever go into this part of the world, please let Vivian and I know. And I will be so happy to take you around.
We definitely will, and likewise. If you find one of your kids actually ends up on the east coast of the U.S., let me know. I'll take good care of them.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Laura. Have a beautiful day there, all right?
All right, and sleep well, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vivian, too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian.
Bye-bye.
Bye.